Was the original theme of the third quarter quell targeting age instead of victors? The clues are all there. There aren't any direct answers in the trilogy, but these are my theories based on book canon. First of all, the announcement of the quell theme happened 3 months before the games. And about 6 months before the games, we know the clock arena was built, or it was at least in the late stages of construction. And the theme was not going to be all victors. We know this because Plutarch tried to tip Katniss off about it to help her as a mentor. This was at the big capital party at the end of the victory tour. Plutarch showed Katniss his pocket watch, which had a secret Mockingjay on it. He said he had a game maker meeting starting at midnight. He was trying to give her a clue about the clock-shaped setup of the arena. The rebel escape plan did not exist yet because it wasn't going to be a victor-themed quell. At the end of Catching Fire, when Katniss is in the rescue hovercraft on her way to District 13, Plutarch tells her, "Of course, when I showed you this, as in the pocket watch, I was merely tipping you off about the arena as a mentor. I thought it might be a first step toward gaining your trust. I never dreamed you'd be a tribute again." There it is, plain and simple. The clock arena was not for a victor-themed quell. As head game maker, I'd say there's a 99% chance that Plutarch would know the theme far in advance. And this theme would impact the design and features of the arena. There are new arenas every year, and based on the elaborateness of them, they would require at least a year to construct, but probably longer. I don't know what the future technology is here. Since the quell arenas are supposed to be particularly grand, I'm sure they take even more time. Logically, it makes the most sense for the capital to pick the quell theme before picking the arena design. On a more normal quell year, having this theme and arena pair planned far in advance wouldn't be an issue, but the circumstances of the 75th games are special. They're high stakes due to the uprisings, and this led to that last-minute change of theme to eliminate Katniss and just show capital dominance. I know in the movies they make it seem like the Victor Quell was all Plutarch's idea, but in the books that doesn't track. Again, Plutarch told Katniss he never dreamed she would be a tribute again. If it was Plutarch's idea, I feel he would say so. He would want the credit for it. He'd be able to brag about how he made this theme and then made this rescue plot, and he's helping the rebels and he's so amazing. So what was the original theme for the third quarter quell in this clock arena that Plutarch was working on? I think there definitely could have been a lot of changes made to the arena during the time between the decision for the Victor Quell and the start of the games, but at the very least, the clock shape with different sectors of horrors was planned. That's the root of this design. Whatever was in each section could definitely be altered during this time though, or not. Fellow Hunger Games creator Nicolette Hill, the Hunger Games teacher, she pointed this amazing thing out in a video. She said, "A lot of the obstacles in this arena are things you have to flee from. You can't fight them. They were effective by making the victors look weak, running away in fear. The poison fog, the blood rain, the tidal wave, and things you just had to like psychologically sit and endure like the Jabberjays. There were still some monsters to fight like those monkeys, but there were a lot of these non-battle sectors." And reminder, the first quell had districts vote to pick the tributes, which is a huge slap in the face because it's like, we're giving you power to choose, but they're voting to sacrifice one of their children. It's very sick. The Capitol's being like, this is what democracy does. And the second quell had double the amount of tributes, which I think reinforces the Capitol agenda that there isn't strength in numbers. Since there are more district people than Capitolites, the Capitol wants them to think they're powerless no matter how many people they have. The Capitol gave different reasons for these quell themes, but I think these are the unspoken ones. My guess is the theme of the third quarter quell had an age-related twist, since the arena was a clock. Clocks mark the passage of time, so I think the reaping pool would have been something to do with the age of the tributes. Possibly since there's 12 numbers on a clock, 12 districts, all of the tributes would be chosen from 12-year-olds. Super sad and awful, obviously. I imagine the card they'd read for the theme would be something like, "As a reminder to the rebels of how their violence caused so many young, helpless children to suffer and starve, all tributes will be reaped from a pool of 12-year-olds. That's my Snow impression, apparently. Or a different theme could be inspired by the total hours in a day. So the reaping pool would extend up to age 24, since there's 24 hours in a day, and 24 tributes. Having older tributes would reinforce this idea that everyone in the districts is at the Capitol's mercy for the entirety of their lives. It doesn't stop when you're 18. Here's what I imagine the card would say. On the 75th anniversary, as a reminder to the rebels that the majority of those who fought and died in the war were in the prime of their lives, the tributes will be reaped from those aged 18 to 24. Something like that. Going back to the idea that the arena obstacles were more about fleeing than fighting, that would make sense for both the 12-year-old group and the adult group. Most of the 12-year-olds wouldn't have any combat skills against monsters, but they could run and hide. And the adults, like what we see in the Victor Quell, are made to look weaker since they're running away. Obviously, it's not weak to run for your lives, but it's the psychology that people aren't standing and fighting, or they're just so powerless, all they can do is run. Reminder about the water factor of the arena. So in the books, all the tributes have these flotation belts on, one, so even if you didn't know how to swim, you still could float and try to work your way to the shore somehow. No one's at an immediate drowning risk because they had these belts. What do you think the theme of the Quell was originally going to be? There's also the question of how the quarter quells came to be in the first place. This is up for debate, but here's my take. I believe that at some point after the 10th games, the Capitol came up with the concept of extra brutal games every 25 years to reinforce their control over the districts. I imagine a list of possible Quell themes were created and is possibly just added to all the time as there's new ideas and new technology. And then when the Quell is approaching, the Capitol picks a theme that they think would be the most effective in asserting their dominance over the districts, given the current state of Panem, because that's the point of these games. There is no reason at all for the Capitol to follow a predetermined order of themes. None of the Quell themes are public knowledge until 3 months before the actual game. We know the Capitol lies to its people to serve whatever narrative they're pushing. When Snow is presenting the theme of the third quarter Quell, he explains that when the laws of the games were laid out, they dictated that every 25 years the anniversary would be marked by a quarter Quell. It would call for a glorified version of the games to make fresh the memory of those killed by the district's rebellion. And then Snow opens up a wooden box with tidy upright rows of yellowed envelopes. The president removes an envelope clearly marked with a 75. That's straight out of Catching Fire. There is nothing that proves the age or the contents of this box of envelopes. In the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which takes place around the 10th Hunger Games, there's nothing about the existence of quarter quells. They were still just coming up with random stuff and seeing what worked and what didn't. They had to have come about sometime after the 10th Games. Probably Snow's idea because he's just full of them. I guess there's a smidgen of doubt about this, but it doesn't seem like it based on what we get in ballads. Since the Capitol is lying about when the quells were created, it's likely they're lying about other aspects of them too, like this predetermined order of Quell themes. There's nothing to prove they're set in stone at all. There's just a little box of envelopes that may or may not have anything even inside of them, and they pluck it out and read this card. You could print out something, put it in an envelope 2 minutes before doing this. Making the envelopes and cards look really old is easy. Or maybe the envelopes are several decades old, but just sit empty until the theme is decided, and then a card is placed in that year's envelope. Easy peasy. Plus, it was barely possible they were able to even do a full victor Quell, like have enough winners from each district when they did it at the 75th game. So having that predetermined, but not having the right amount of victors, like that wouldn't work. How do you think the Quell themes came to be? What theme do you think was originally planned for that clock arena? I want to know.